Exactly. So glutamate is really important because it causes a lot of problems. Matter of fact, there's a new report that just came out a few weeks ago that excess glutamate in your body it converts directly to peroxynitrate. So glutamate is not a good guy. You need glutamate, right? So don't get me wrong, but almost everybody has excess glutamate, especially if you have defects in this gene called your GAD gene. Your GAD1 gene, well, these two genes produce excess glutamate in your body, but this is how you're supposed to take glutamate and convert it to GABA. Glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter. It's fine, I need to wake up, I need glutamate, right? Need to learn, I need glutamate. However, you have too much excitation of glutamate receptors, and over and over and over again, you have dementia. You will burn out glutamate receptors. There's a good book written on this called Neuroexcitotoxins by Dr. Russell Blaylock. He's a neurologist who's converted to our side. And he writes a lot about glutamate. Now you've heard of glutamate in your diet as the name monosodium glutamate, MSG, right? But there's a whole bunch of different glutamates. Matter of fact, it does not have to be labeled anymore. Thank you, FDA. And it's labeled as natural and artificial flavorings. Because they are flavorings. What they do is they excite the glutamate receptors on your tongue. They're excitatory, they fire to your brain, and you go, ooh, that was good. I'm gonna buy me another bag of those chips. So they're found in processed foods, Chinese food. I went into a Chinese restaurant a couple of years ago. It was a brand new Chinese restaurant next to a coffee shop in our town. I said, hey, do you use MSG in your food? He goes, I said, what? He goes, don't believe any Chinese restaurant that says they don't use MSG. We don't sprinkle MSG on our food. I don't think anybody does, but it all comes with MSG. It all does. So unless it's one of those restaurants that's making everything by scratch, it definitely has MSG in it. Because that's what makes it taste better. Wow, I really like their food. It's really good. It's either the spices, it's the wonderful organic vegetables you're using, or it's the MSG. Because it's excitatory to your tongue, you want more of it, fires glutamate receptors in the brain, it burns them out.
It's also a lot cheaper than using good ingredients.
Oh, it's a lot cheaper than using good ingredients. Exactly.
So what receptor burns out the NMDA receptor eventually?
Yes. So glutamate is not good in excess. When you have GAD genes, glutamate is supposed to convert to GABA. And it does through this gene. GABA is a calming neurotransmitter. You need GABA to fall asleep, and GABA to relax, to chill. So people with excess glutamate don't do that very well. So they're highly excitatory. It can cause anxiety. Now I didn't talk about on the serotonin, the MAO gene. A person can have too little serotonin, right? And have depression. So this MAO gene here, if I have those defects, I can cycle between too much and too little serotonin, having that gene defect. But you don't want to confuse depression with anxiety, because it is a fine line there. I have depression. Really? Is it really truly depression? Or are you constantly nervous? And you're constantly worried, and you're sad because you're thinking of the worst case scenario all the time. That's anxiety, that's not depression. So a true depression from a decreased serotonin is going to be a melancholy that has no explanation. So there is a difference, and you have to be careful with that, because you treat it completely opposite from a dietary standpoint. So a person with a true depression, you want more serotonin, right? A person with a true depression, you want more of its precursors. So a person that is on a vegan diet because they don't want to kill animals, or whatever ethical reason they want to be on a vegan diet, or their friend is on it, so they thought it'd be really good too. And since they started this vegan diet 5 years ago, their depression has continued to worsen. It's probably because they have too little serotonin. Follow me? They need to get some protein in their body.
It seems like with the SSRIs, they're trying to treat both. Not that the meds are good in the first place. They're trying to treat
It's very tricky. That's why they work with some people and don't work with other people. They work at different times, or they work for a period of time, and then they stop working. It's very difficult. The other reason why you could get depression is this chiuretic pathway, and I better not get into any more of that. But you can pull tryptophan, what I call a tryptophan steal, into the IDO pathway, and you create quinolinic acid, which can cause depression. And that's probably the patient that doesn't work with the SRRI. It's really the IDO pathway type depression. So excess, and you'll also test those patients and you put them on a higher protein, and it actually makes them worse because they're stealing their tryptophan down the IDO pathway. So you can see how, can you see a little bit that there's not just like a cookie cutter approach to this? And the more we try to take a cookie cutter approach, it only works on a very small percentage of the patients, because you're not a cookie. Yes?
What about bipolar?
Bipolar, there's actually a gene that increases the risk of bipolar. It's a DAO gene, so it causes, at least this is the theory right now, that it causes this MAO gene to turn on and off, basically, whether they have the defect or not. So I think then the people with that DAO gene and the MAO gene defect have a greater degree of bipolar and schizophrenia.
Is it just one of the DAOs?
Yes, it is. I don't know if I put it on here or not. I did not. Probably on purpose. So you got to be careful, because if people think, oh my God, I got schizophrenia.
How do you treat it?
How do you treat it? The same way that I'm talking about. You have to manipulate the diet, and there's some different nutrition that you can help with it. There's a whole bunch of other glutamate genes, and it's important with glutamate because remember I said methionine can feed cancer? Glutamine can feed cancer too. So if I'm not converting glutamine, which is this other gene, this GLU gene, the GLS gene, if I'm not converting glutamine to glutamate, I'm going to have excess glutamine, and that can feed cancer as well. So that's why I'm very careful on how much glutamine, even though glutamine can be very healing to the small intestine, you got to be very careful how much you use. So I typically don't use more than 1 gram a day, even on non-cancer patients. This is the NOS gene that, remember, that causes NOS uncoupling. And that one you would treat even if the person really doesn't have symptoms. This is the biopterin, how it converts from biopterin to tetrahydrobiopterin.